Hello.
Is this Russ Miller on the phone with me?
It could be. Who are you? Yes, Brad. This is Russ.
Well, let me tell you something. It's an honor to have you on here. Of course, I was always like to do an introduction to people, and of course,
Yeah.
I could do that with you. But my God, you've done so much. I was like trying to put you in a box, and I really couldn't put you in a box real quick. So I think it's going to take a little bit of time to spread it out. But the first thing I want to do is talk about the MT and me, because that's your YouTube channel, and this is where this podcast is going to appear. Let's talk about the MT and me first off. Tell me about it real quick.
Well, about 2.5 years ago, Ree and I got a wild hair to buy an RV and redo it and fix it into the perfect retirement vehicle so that could travel all around the country and live in it, literally live in it, and just become a nomad. Embrace that nomadic way of life. Looked for something that we would like. We knew we'd have to redo it completely, top to bottom, because we weren't going to find anything that we would actually, like as is. That would just be that would be totally impossible. So we looked and finally ran across this RV that was sitting on a lot in not Carson, but in Nebraska. Johnny Carson's hometown, actually, in Nebraska, and I've just gone blank on the name of the place. But anyway, they have an old lot downtown that was just full of old RVs, and by old I mean this was stuff from the 70s, some of them even from the 60s, and it was basically, in their eyes, just junk, but it wasn't on their main lot, but they had it. And so on another wild hair, we took off one weekend and drove to Nebraska to look at this RV that we had found it online on site, checking it out online on their website. So we drove up there and we looked at it and kind of talked to them a little bit, and they wanted a little more money than thought it was worth at the time. So we ended up driving back empty-handed, but we knew a lot more, and we really knew we liked this. This was made by a company called Mobile Traveler that we had never heard of, and we did a little more looking into them and liked the way their idea. The company was out of business by then; it was just completely gone. But there were some of these MTs, as we called them, still around. And this was one of them. It didn't run. It was in pretty bad shape. But there was something about it that I just found charming. It was just so nice. I loved the design of it. It had some aerodynamics that were really, really advanced for 1977. And it was really way ahead of its time in several different ways. So, make a long story even shorter, we ended up calling them back and say, okay, we'll take it, and got the price down a little bit, bought it from them completely on the telephone, and they helped us, hooked us up with a company to, it didn't run, like I said, so we had to bring it down here on a trailer. So found a guy in another part of Nebraska that would go over there and pick it up, put it on a flatbed trailer, and drove it down here to cross it, and we got it off. And one of our early videos shows him arriving and us unloading it in the yard, and we've been working on it ever since then. So I'm hoping this summer, this is 2 years now, that it's a little over 2 years. It was 2 years, I guess, in November, I think, that I've had the MT. And I've done a lot to it. We have it gutted. It's cleaned out on the inside. I'm in the process of working on the engine now, and I'm hoping that this summer I will be able to to get the motor running in it. Getting real close to that point. And then a few other things, and then maybe I can actually put it in gear and drive it up and down the driveway to be sure that everything else works on it too. I have to fix the brakes before I do that because I want to be able to stop, and I know they don't work right now. But yeah, so we decided along through all this. Yeah, I'm sorry. What?
No, you're good. I mean, and I want to talk about two things, but I want to keep talking about the MT and me for just a second. And I kind of threw it out there, the voice of Ashley County. And if anybody is listening to this, you can obviously tell this guy is not called the voice of Ashley County for jokes and S and G's. I mean, this guy, he's been Russ, how long have you been a radio man? What year did you start?
There are a lot of people that think I have been on KAGH since the very beginning, and I always tell them, no, it just seems that way. I started when I was in high school, which the year I guess was 1972, late 72 is when I first went on the air, and I have my voice has been heard probably just about every day since then on that station, or well, we have several stations now, and so that's what 50, about half a century, something like that. So I've done a lot of talking in my lifetime.
Well, I was born in 71, a year before that, and that's 52 years. But now let's go back to the MTMB for a minute. I'm going to come back to the radio thing in a minute, but I want to. I'm one of those weavers and turners and such. But
that's fine, because those are the two main things. That's what my life is now. I work and I come home and then I work on the MT and then I sleep a little bit and then it starts over. Yeah. So
how many episodes, Russ? How many episodes? You said 2 years, whatever. But how many episodes? Like 130. I've watched most of them. I can assure you.
Yeah. Let's see. We are doing this interview on a Saturday. I publish Sunday mornings at 7 o'clock. Pardon me, on YouTube, 7 a.m. And tomorrow morning will be video number 132.
That is tenacity at its best, and you guys are out there in the cold. I say you guys. I know that there's you have different people throughout your show, and it's very interesting. You've brought this thing. You've resurrected this creature. I mean, you spent a lot of time with it. That's for sure. I mean, it's been tell me, what keeps you going? That's a lot of episodes, building this thing, man. Tell me about it. What keeps you going?
I have to admit, I was a little, I don't know, I don't want to say hesitant, but, cautious maybe of starting a YouTube channel. This was, Ree was the driving force behind that. And, she thought it would be cool and would be exciting. And I questioned from the very start, I said, I don't know if I can. I mean, I'm a radio person. I'm used to the medium of not being seen. Now, I've done plenty of work where I have been seen. I've done a little television. I've done some stage work. I used to act in plays and things like that. So I've never been shy about getting up in front of people or a camera. It doesn't bother me. I just never done it that much, and I wasn't, that familiar with it. So. But I finally said, okay, well, let's start this up and see what happens. And at the time, I never dreamed that I would consistently, produce anywhere from a 10 to 25 minute video every week for, like I said, tomorrow's going to be number 132. And just never thought it would go that far, and now it has become such a part of my existence that it's just it's like everything else. I am to tie this in with my career in radio and in broadcasting, first of all, I'm one of these really lucky people that I love what I do. I love my job. I would not do anything else. I have enjoyed every moment of work in my life, you know. There are some days that, you know, when you have to get up consistently at 4:30 in the morning for years and years and, you know, be there and try to sound awake and bright and happy at 6 a.m. There's some days that's not that easy and you're thinking, why in the world do I do this? But still, all things considered, I love my job. I'm glad I've done it and I wouldn't do anything else. And it's always been a priority in my life. And I feel an obligation as a broadcaster to my listeners. You know, they're expecting me to be there. I got to be there. You know, I don't have to just please my boss. I've got a few thousand other people, hopefully listening, that I've got to please as well. You know, you're working for the public, and I've started to feel that way about this YouTube channel, DMT and Me. I don't have a huge following. At latest count, I think I have 158 subscribers. In the YouTube world, that's just starting out. That's minimal, you know. But to anyone listening to this, I would appreciate you subscribing. By all means, please do so. You can do that with one click on the YouTube page. So there, I put my plug in for that. But I don't have a lot of subscribers, but I do get a lot of viewers. Just about 2 weeks ago, YouTube informed me that I had in the course of the channel, the entire history of the channel, the 2 years or whatever that I've been doing videos, I had surpassed 10,000 views, and that's a milestone. And I thought, wow, that's 10,000. 10,000 of anything is a lot. So 10,000 views, that's bloody cool, you know? And so that kind of reinforces the fact that I feel an obligation now. I have started this project. I got to see it through. You know, I want to get this RV running. I want to get it finished. You know, start what I finish, stay with it, and document it all along the way. So the MT and Me as a channel, as you know, you've watched it quite a bit, is not exclusively about me and Pearl, which is my MT's name. It's not, 2 weeks ago we went to the rodeo because that's part of my job. And so I carried the cameras along and we documented the rodeo, you know, and the parade and all that. We do the Armadillo Festival every year. This one, tomorrow morning, I do talk about Pearl, but I also document what the windstorm damage was around my house, which was not very much, luckily. But I also, at the end of it, come back and say, look, it's a few days later. Let me tell you about this storm. And I talk about just how bad it was here in Crossett and in Ashley County, that, you know, everybody had their power knocked out and trees down on houses, and that we are so lucky no one was injured in this storm because it was really bad. You know, we had winds of, the Weather Service says, up to 100 miles an hour, which just blows my mind. That's like a hurricane coming through. So the channel talks about it. It's a vlog. It's a look at what's going on in my life, focused on renovating this old RV that's sitting in my front yard. But it also takes time to look beyond that to the fact that there is more to life than just working on this RV.
Well, YouTube has made it easier for creators to make money recently. I don't know if you're aware of it, but like if you can get 500 subscribers, which is basically a jumbo jet full of people, then you can start accessing some things. So we need to get you up to that. So if you're listening to this podcast, please go like and subscribe. The MT and Me, we're gonna have we're gonna have it in the title where you can easily get to it. But go there and like you said, this guy, this is this is, you know, Russ, let me just toot your horn for just 1 second, okay? Because, you know, I mean, the show you guys do here is very personal. It's what's going on. It's the weather. You guys are on location everywhere all the time. I went up the first time I really remember meeting you. I walked up and said, "Hey, Russ Miller, I want to shake your hand. I'm Brad Barfield, and I want you to know my name because you're out there. You do everything all the time, and you've been exposed to everybody and all the events going on, and that's a true community leader in my opinion. So, you know, I want to just toot that for you. And, you know, you being in broadcasting, it's a totally different thing. You talked about it, but getting up every day, I don't care what you're doing, and showing up and being in a decent enough mood to be able to speak to a bunch of people. Because, you know, with this podcast, you know, with mine, I can decide if I want to do a show or not, but getting up every day or mostly every day and, you know, doing a show is totally different. But, you know, just the radio show up there, you guys, I think that one thing I always remember, I remember my grandma called in up there and had you guys mention a name on a birthday, but just as far as the local radio show goes, and of course, you know, if you ever seen any of the things that I own, like Ashley County Now and Outside of the Grid, I talk about things local to CrossFit because I love CrossFit.
Oh yeah.
I've been here.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and of course, just tell us about that. You know, tell us about your experience here and more of that, if you will.
Radio as an industry from the inside really has changed a lot. Whenever I started radio, I started working about 3 hours every weeknight when I was still in high school. We still had a small building located at 9th and Main. The building's not there anymore, but it's I think the foundation still is. Right up there on the corner, you know, now in our old backyard is where they have the farmers market and everything there next to the tennis courts. There's a little building there, and everything was, we were a completely live operation. Our AM station was on during the daytime. It wasn't even on at night. And then we had an FM that was on till like 10 o'clock at night, something like that. But whoever was on the air had to do everything. We played records, and all of our commercials were like on tape cartridges. And then we had a couple of network feeds and things like that. But everything was live, and you had an operator that kind of held it all together. You know, you sit there and you look at your program log, and it tells you every hour what you have to play that hour, and commercial wise and everything else that you need to do. Played a big variety of music. About every 2 hours we were playing something different, everywhere from middle of the road, as they called it, to country, of course. Played a little gospel during the day and some easy listening, and of course a little bit of rock top 40 in the afternoons once school let out. So that's the picture, and it was very, very local, because when the thing about radio, and I think that thing that always appealed to me, is that live radio was indeed immediate. When something happened, as soon as you heard about it, you could talk about it. You knew more. Radio news was very much on the spot, more so than, say, television was during the day. You know, nowadays television is pretty well on the spot too, because of the advances in technology. But at the time with radio, all you had to do was run down there with a tape recorder or get to a telephone, which all still had wires on them back then, and call it in, and you could talk about what was happening. So it was a very sense of immediacy to it. And it was extremely local. Over the years, the operation has changed. Now, we still do a lot of live radio in the mornings on the station I'm on 104.9 FM, from 6 a.m. till 12 noon every weekday is live. That's a full 6 hours of live action where it's a real person sitting there playing the music, talking to you. Now, we're playing the music off computers now, but still, we play the music, you know. Now, beyond that, we could be live at some times, but more than likely we're going to be on some syndicated satellite service music, that just plays. They play the music and they have the jocks, and but it plays our local commercials, so you still get a little bit of local, and we can break in anytime and make a local announcement if we have to. So you've still got that element of we very much want to keep our finger on the pulse of the community so that we can provide that information. So there have been a whole lot of changes, some for the better, some for the worse. Radio as a whole, I think, has gotten away from local service, particularly in some of your larger operations. You have some stations now that there aren't any real people there. I mean, it's all automated or syndicated, and there's very little of a local touch going on to it. But I'm glad we're not that way. So we still have, and now we have a conglomeration, 4 stations run by R&M Broadcasting. So we've got 104.9 KAGH, where I'm on the air every morning. Q-Light 99.5 FM is also part of our operation. And then we have KAGH AM, our original station, which has been on the air since 1951, I think, was the year it went on the air. And it is all sports. It's CBS Sports Radio, and so it's sports talk. And then 102.7 The Light, which is modern Christian music, 24/7. So we try to have something within our broadcast family to offer to everybody. And 2 of our stations, 104.9 FM and also Q-Light 99.5, do a lot of live programming and really try to stay in touch with what's going on here in Crossett, Ashley County, and South Arkansas, and present a lot of timely information as such. And I think that even to this day, that's the most important thing radio can do. It is literally in our license, our government licenses. So it says we are licensed to serve the public interest. That's the exact phrase the government uses. That's the reason they grant us a license, to serve the public interest. So I think it's important that we have to be sure we do that.
You know what, Russ, I remember, you talking about that. You were bringing up, I was, again, enjoying your voice and the story. And I want to hear more stories. You mentioned about running around with tape recorders and all that kind of stuff a long time ago, and I remember it. I mean, I remember sitting, with my grandparents, and, the radio always was going back then. Now everybody's connected to various things. And I'll be honest with you, I have listened to you guys more recently since I became aware of what you were doing locally, because my brain has been so focused on other things. I've been like, here and there and 100 miles per hour. But man, when you start looking at community and you start looking at, where you live and, just the, making it, just being connected here and now, I guess you could say. And that's important. So, you can talk about some stories if you have any. I don't know if I'm kind of blowing some air up here.
Do I have stories?
Yeah, that's kind of a dumb question, but tell us about it.
Kind of story. Okay, well, the one that came to mind just now when you were talking about, you referred to me saying something about running around with tape recorders and stuff. To anybody that ever knew Charlie Park, who is a name you can still say in this town, and people will remember Charlie. God rest his soul now. I worked closely and for many, many years with Charlie Park, and we had a love-hate relationship. Sometimes I was ready to choke him, but one thing I will say is that he was the best newsman that I ever have worked with. And he sincerely was very, very good at his job. But the funny thing was, he was, I remember when we started adding computers, Charlie wouldn't have anything to do with computers. He's very much kind of a technophobic, I guess, when it came to them. So I had to keep him a studio that actually had a microphone and cart machine so that he could record stuff and play his carts and things like that. But that's okay. But he used to go around. He always had a cassette recorder with him, and this was actually before or about the time digital recorders were just coming on the market, and they were very expensive. And of course, being a small station, we didn't have one. So we still were using cassette recorders. And to anyone listening who doesn't know, Google that and it will explain what a cassette recorder is, what a cassette tape is, or cassette, as D. Smith used to call them, another name I worked with for many years. But anyway, back to Charlie, he almost got famous or infamous perhaps for taking that whole cassette recorder, and cassette recorders used to have a little condenser microphone built into them so that you could just record. You could set the cassette on a table in front of you and push the record button and talk, and the built-in microphone would pick you up and all the other room noise and everything. Well, he got in the habit of using that for his interviews, and he would take that cassette and just literally stick it up in somebody's face. And so he's holding this cassette recorder, which is about the size of, say, a hardbound book, you know, and would stick it up in their face and get their comments and all like that. So rather than just, you think about a reporter usually just holding a microphone and passing it back and forth, he wouldn't mess with. We had microphones, of course, and he could have taken one and plugged it in and used it. No, that was too much work for Charlie. He would just stick the whole recorder up in their face, and it worked fine. I mean, it worked for him, and like I said, he kind of got a reputation for that. And I can see him to this day, you know, doing that on interviews, and he get his interview and run back into the station and edit down what he wanted and have his news going on. So the guy was really, really good. D. Smith is another name I worked with, who has now passed on. D was more of an institution. You're talking about me being associated with KAGH a long time, which I have been, but D was even more so. He was Mr. KAGH, and he always will be in my eyes, because he worked there from I think is somewhere in the early 60s is when he actually came on board, and did a little bit of everything. He was on the air, had a wonderful voice, a great personality, and he was also working radio sales, so he was out there. He did his share of news coverage and sports coverage as well too. The thing about working at a small radio station is that you do a little bit of everything and you learn it all. This is why it's such a great entry-level job to the industry. You have this very, very small percentage of people that move on up to big stations and get famous in a city. Some of them get nationally famous, 10 or 12 maybe do. I'm talking people like Casey Kasem, who get syndicated with a program, or Rick Dees, another one, that got syndicated nationwide and becomes very well known. So, but they all started the same way, and at a small local station, and that's where you learn the ropes and you cut your chops, and then if you're lucky and ambitious, then you climb the ladder and maybe make it big someday, and actually have a chance to make a lot of money. The rest of us who stay behind make just enough to get by, and that's about it. It's not an industry that pays high. You don't get rich doing this, but it does get in your blood, and it's like I said earlier, is I wouldn't want to do anything else. So Um, so yeah, there are, anytime something happens and, you're involved in radio or broadcasting, chances are you're going to be right in the middle of it. So, and if you're the kind of person that likes to be there, like, okay, for example, we just had a bad windstorm about a week ago that caused a lot of damage. And, over the years, there have been other major incidents. I recall, most recently it's been, okay, I'm very bad at remembering how long ago something was now, but, within the last, couple, 3 years, 5 years, when the old plywood plant caught on fire and burned here in Crossett. We got up one Saturday morning, and early that morning there was a boom, and before we knew it, the sky was full of smoke, and that whole place burned to the ground. Well, I ended up spending that whole day. It was Saturday, which is normally my day off, one of my days off, but I went into work and spent much of the morning and the whole afternoon on the radio, coming in and doing live updates on what was going on, and also updating our website, because that's an important part of radio now, is maintaining an updated website and Facebook page. You got to do the social media thing. So putting all that.
Advertise those two real quick. Advertise those two, because I share your Facebook post on the Ashley County Now a lot. You do the weather every day up there. Somebody does. I don't know.
I do. Yeah, I actually do that. Yeah, that's one of my routines in the morning is copying off a forecast from the National Weather Service and putting it up on the website. It's one of those little things that people that's part of that local touch. People, more than anything else, will tune into a local radio station because they want to know what the weather is and what it's going to be. First thing in the morning, you want to know what the temperature is and what the conditions are outside. And then, of course, you want to know what the day is going to be like. A lot of people have to have that information. If they work outdoors, they plan their day around that. Farmers, construction workers, anybody who has outdoor activities is concerned about the weather, and that's what they want to do. And so that it's one of the prime things. And there's kind of a rule of thumb in morning radio that when you're the host or the personality or whatever you want to call it, the person doing the talking, then every break that you do, you include the temperature and a nutshell forecast. Like sunny and 91 this afternoon, it's 75 right now. That's all you got to say. But you put that in there because your radio audience, for the most part, is not, people don't turn on the radio and stare at it and listen to it like you do a television. They turn it on and it's in the background, or they turn it on and it's in the car, and the rest of life goes on. So you hear this and then you don't hear that. You're in the room, you're out of the room, you're in the car, you're out of the car, you're talking to other people, you're doing other stuff, you're cooking breakfast if you're home, you're getting dressed, whatever. So you don't hear every second. And the whole idea is that you have to keep in mind that, every 5 to 10 minutes, you might have a totally different audience listening. So you repeat yourself a lot, or it seems like you do to yourself. It's like, I know I just said this, but I'm going to say it again. And, because someone's going to hear it that didn't hear it before. So, it's just one of those things you have to kind of keep in the back of your mind when you're presenting information, especially in the mornings. Later in the day, not so much, but those mornings, that what we call morning drive, from say 6 to 9 or 6 to 10 o'clock, that's a busy time for everybody. That's the day getting started. So there's a whole lot going on in everybody's life, and here you are trying to be a part of it and trying to help them keep up with it. So
I feel like I'm at a Russ Miller master class on radio, and I love it. I mean, I love it, man. This is in my lingo, this is mucho bueno. So, and you talked about, and I want more. I'll take as much as your time as you'll give us. I've done shows that are 4 hours long. I'm not asking of that for you, but I'm just telling you. So as much time as you have, we're willing to take it. But and I want to delve more into it. There was those storms back in the early '80s, late '70s, early '80s. There's the music back there. I'd really like to swerve into music for a minute, because you mentioned spinning music out there on that radio station. Back in the 70s and 80s, it was a different thing. I mean, with what you were playing back then, that's kind of what I'm listening to. In my brain, that's what I my brain is programmed to that. My brain started working in the late 70s, and that's where I started hearing music. So
yeah.
But now there's a lot of things going on back then. There's. I remember, in my brain back there was very soluble. It was soaking in the tornadoes that were going on. It was soaking in the music that was going on. Let's just, I'm trying to explore the 80s lately. I want to dig you out, and kind of see what your focus is in that boundary between the 70s and 80s, and kind of, I'm really fascinated with what CrossFit has done since then. So I'm trying to swerve in all of this kind of stuff, the changes that have occurred in, societal, economically, all that kind of stuff that happened around here, the storms and the music, and and you're the guy to do it. I mean, you're the brain that's been out there. You've been focused on this stuff, and I'll narrow down questions if you want me to. But I'm trying to get you to tease apart these past 40 or 50 years we've been looking at here as a radio personality, what you've seen with our county, with our town. Sum it up for me, Russ Miller. Just give us your summation.
There have been such a tremendous amount of changes that I've seen over the years. I was born in the mid-50s, so I grew up in the 60s and 70s. I mean, I graduated high school in the 70s, and I've been working in radio since then, since the 70s. So, and in my teenage years, I listened to the radio a lot, of course, during the mid to late 60s. I can remember the first time I heard the Beatles. On my brother had, my older brother had a small Hitachi 9 transistor AM radio, little pocket radio, that was a little bit bigger than a pack of cigarettes. And I remember laying across his bed one night and listening to a station in Chicago, WLS, that I literally grew up listening to, and to this day still try to emulate, I guess, because that was kind of my ideal radio station over the years that I listened to. And we do that in radio. We always hear someone else and we copy it. It's a copycat industry like everything else. But anyway, I remember laying there and hearing this sound, hearing this group that was the Beatles, that was also in the news, and it was such a revolutionary changing sound, that, of course, looking back historically now, made such a difference in not just the music world, but the social world, period, over the years to come. So I probably got, I guess, bitten by a radio bug early in life, and it's, aside from the usual things when you're a little kid and you want to be an astronaut and you want to be a fireman, and then you want to, drive a tractor and be the little things that kids like. Aside from that, whenever I got old enough, I had decided that I didn't have a whole lot of musical talent, so I probably was never going to be a rock star. Therefore, I wanted to be on the radio. And so that's what I did. And apparently it's what I had the aptitude for, because I've stayed with it through thick and thin. Now, as for the changes in CrossFit, man, this place, I mean, it grew, it expanded, over those years. There was, you're talking about storms. When I was in the fourth grade, which would have been mid 60s, maybe 65, 66, a tornado came through town that did some extensive damage. And it's the first tornado I remember, you know, like being around or being in. And it kind of came across the south part of town, tore some houses out. Here again, I don't think it injured anybody. We were real fortunate there. But there was that. And then, since then, there have been other bad storms. There have been ice storms. Ice storms have probably done more damage around here than anything. And I think I can remember maybe three really severe ice storms that have hit this area over the past few decades. And that is the only thing I can think of that has knocked out electricity like this windstorm did last week. Literally knocked everybody out. That's something that you just don't see. I mean, all of CrossFit proper, the city itself was down, you know, all the surrounding areas. Hamburg was completely dark. So was Fountain Hill. Wilmot was completely dark over in the eastern part of the county. Parkdale and Montrose, I think, were dark for a day or two and then got their lights back. So everyone suffered with this, you know, because the damage was so extensive. And the ice storms are the only other thing that have done that kind of damage around here before. The changes that have occurred, I mean, CrossFit expanded, and we've seen so much change. And I look at it from the point of view of our involvement. I mean, as radio being here, our stations being here through all of it. And when you look at it, say, from a business aspect, which we very much have to do because a radio is a commercial business like everybody else. We sell advertising, you know, just like a newspaper would. That's the way you make your money, is you sell advertising and for all those ads that you hear on the radio. And in the 60s, and also in the 70s, whenever I started radio, all through that, we had so many smaller businesses here in CrossFit. And I'm talking about CrossFit, but Ashley County in general. Hamburg is the same way. And, you know, everybody around us was the same way, too. You had a lot of individual shops and department stores, and you had a plethora of like drugstores, and but what you did not have was Walmart. You didn't have a big retail outlet like that. I think the first one of those that ever came to CrossFit was probably Gibson's. Now that was located where the main mall is today. They're at 101 Main Street, the old general store from the CrossFit Company days. The company store was located there. Excuse me. And I believe Gibson's was probably the first one. It later became Howard Brothers and moved out to West CrossFit. And then you had another, you know, a few more stores, what you'd call discount stores come through town. And then, of course, Walmart came on the scene, and they ended up building a store on South Main here, which is currently Atwood's today, that building, once they moved out to the east side of town, out near where our studios are now, where they're located to this day. But you didn't have those big stores back then. You had small shops. So there was a whole lot of business, a lot of retail business going on, a very large, close-knit business community. That has disappeared over the years. The small businessman has found it harder and harder and harder, not just in CrossFit, but in America, period, to stay in business and operate, particularly in smaller towns. Now, still quite a bit of that in larger urban areas. You've got enough business that you can operate small businesses and still get by. But in small towns, no, because and part of it is because of these large retail outlets, larger stores that come in and literally offer everything and can offer it at a lower price. So they're putting some of the little men out of business. Now, from our aspect, as a radio station, depending on advertising revenue to operate, well, that's business gone. We're losing customers right there. You've got so many smaller operations that aren't there anymore. So we don't have all these commercials for this guy's drugstore and this other guy's clothing store and things like that, because they're not there anymore. So we have to change our aspect, how the revenue that we approach, and so if you listen to radio stations now, even in cities, you think about the commercials that you hear that are local, car dealers. That's going to be the big one right there. You hear car dealers, you'll hear one car dealer after another, and you might occasionally get a clothing store or something like that. But for the most part, it's going to be car dealers or maybe what we call industrial customers that come along that just present advertising for public image values, So you've had all those changes over the years, and then we've had in recent years so much of our industrial operation has shut down here in CrossFit and has left, so that we have just a small just a small paper mill now working here. Everything else has gone or sold out or ceased operations, and that has taken a big chunk out of the workforce period here, and conversely, a big chunk of the area revenue has gone down because of that. And here again, that's reflected in your lack of businesses and small businesses in particular. So it's made it harder for everyone to get by. So you've seen a lot of change. CrossFit had a lot of growth in, especially I'd say the 80s, the 70s, 80s, and 90s were still pretty good. And even the early 2000s. Since then, I think it's been drifting the other direction. Even our population of the area has drifted down since then. So it's, you hope it's one of those things that's cyclical, maybe just you have your ups and downs. And since we're all living here and we have a vested interest in this, we're all hoping it will come back up. Some places do, and there are some places that don't. Some communities simply slowly fade away. I don't think CrossFit's going to be one of those, and I certainly hope it won't be. If it does, I guess I'll fade away with it.
Well, and we hope that's not the case, because this is a beautiful area down here, and if
it really is.
Well, and if we can't be doing what we were before, although listen to me on this, I still think we're the forestry capital of the South. There are more trees here. We have a glut of trees, and we just need to figure out how to turn it into money. But we still hadn't got to that music yet, though. I want to weave in and out of music. You mentioned like in the afternoons, you guys would do like a show for the kids. What do you want to call it? You got to pep it up a little bit. But like, tell me how the music flow has, how much music, how what's music broadcasting look like?
Music, I think music, popular music of any type, is a reflection of society. You have, if you look at music from, I don't know, say the 50s and even the early 60s, whenever rock and roll, as we call it, was just getting started. I mean, people back, you look at it, music, let's say early rock from the 50s, and you think about people thought this was scandalous, and we just laugh at that because it was so innocent and beboppy and just peppy and happy and, you know, nonsensical. And we're saying, how could anyone possibly think this was scandalous, you know, compared to what happened later? But there again, it's a reflection of the times, the 50s, early 60s, kind of, you know, we look back now and we know it wasn't as innocent as it seems, but still innocence was the best word you could describe the Leave It to Beaver era, you know. And then you hit the 60s when everything changed, the decade of change. You had, civil unrest with civil rights movements developing. You had some very heavy opposition to the war in Vietnam and protests there. You had a lot of unrest on college. You had the Kent State incident where, you know, a National Guardsman actually killed 3 students accidentally. And so you had a whole lot of you know, social unrest going on, and the music reflected that. Rock music stepped up. You had songs that got more political, and some of them bitingly so, in their lyrics, you know, attacking the government and the lifestyle. So you had that. You hit the 70s, and it kind of rolls on until disco comes along, and that's a whole thing to itself that I won't get into because most people, especially those of us in radio, just we really did not have an appreciation for disco. It was just the same beat over and over and over. And I guess if you were a dancer, you loved it. But anyway, it kind of took the soul out of music for a while. And then you hit the 80s, and you had what the 80s? Grunge rock came in. And here again, you're getting back to a more a natural, you know, unprocessed, raw type of music, you know. And then you hit the 90s, and things become very slick and polished again. Plus, all this time, you have an increasing influence from hip hop and rap music that's you know, starting to have an influence in everything that you hear, especially in the pop music venue. And then you have the modern day where it's kind of a mishmash of everything together. You got rap and hip hop and folk and rock that can all be in the same song at the same time. So it's kind of hard to put your finger on it today. And then that's the popular music venue. Okay. That's the way popular music has gone in the last 3 or 4 decades. You got country then on the other side, which is what I play now, is modern country. And I listen to modern country today, and it kind of fascinates me. In that, you know, a lot of people say country ain't country anymore, and that's very true. You know, there's very little in today's music that would remind you of Hank Williams or, you know, or Farron Young or Charlie Pride or George Jones, some of those old time country greats from the 60s and 70s. There's just not a lot of that anymore, a lot of reference to them. But the music, you've got a generation now of artists doing what is called country music, and they grew up with rock and rap and hip hop and everything. So that's all reflected in the way they do their music. So it is fascinating to me to see how that has evolved into today's country, which, interestingly enough, is our musical positioning statement. That's what we say, we're today's country, KAGH. And whatever today's country is what we're going to be playing. But you compare that to 3 hours every weekday morning after my morning show from 9 till noon, we have what's called Country Gold, which is where we go back and we play a lot more traditional country music for 3 hours a day. And you compare those two, it's quite a contrast, Suddenly you're hearing, Johnny Cash and George Jones and a lot of, those country greats from back in the years. And this is what I started playing early in my career, because I started in the early 70s. And so I played a mix of rock, and naturally, being a teenager, I would favor the rock, at the time, because that's the music I was into at that moment. But I also, as part of my job requirement, I played some country. So I played my share of Charlie Pride and Jim Reeves and George Jones and Tammy Wynette and Crystal Gale over the years. And, you could pull out any name, and they were all part of what I've played on the air. And then I've seen it evolve over the years. Somewhere in, I can't tell you exactly when, I should be able to, but I can't anymore. Somewhere in the early 80s, we switched our format to full-time country on 104.9 FM. Before that, we've been, I think I mentioned earlier, we played a little bit of everything. The term in radio was block programming, because you programmed a block of modern music, and then you'd have a block of country music, and then you'd have a block of big band music and a block of gospel. And a block was anywhere from 1 to 2 hours long. So during the course of the day, you kind of tried to play music to fit what you figured your audience was at that time, trying to match the demographics. Somewhere in the early 80s, we chunked all that and decided, we're just going to play country. And so that's what we've done ever since then. And we've just changed with the times as country music has changed. But at the same time, I have personally kept up with other types of music. I had kids growing up by that point, and so they were listening to pop music. And I still have a love for the old, 70s, 60s and 70s rock that I grew up on. I have a pretty extensive vinyl collection. So I still have a bunch of albums, some of them that I had since I was a teenager. And so I still listen to that a lot, too. And I expose my kids to it, and they're, to this day, they like it as well, along with some of their modern music. And plus my tastes have mellowed over the years. I spend I still like old rock, and I spend my work days playing modern country. But if you just let me sit and listen to music, I will probably pick some jazz. I love to listen to jazz music now. So my tastes have mellowed a little bit as well over the years. But music has always been a very big part of my life. And like I said, since I didn't really have much musical talent as far as playing an instrument, I couldn't make my own music, so I chose a life where I got to play other people's music, and I'm still doing that to this day. So,
but now, Russ, you've also done. You mentioned it earlier. You guys have been involved in some theater stuff around town. If I'm not badly mistaken, or did I confuse that with somebody else? I don't know. What do you think?
No, that would be me. Yeah, we used to have a very active amateur theater here in Crossett. Oh, excuse me.
Well, hold on a second. Hold on a second. Yeah, I can give you a little bit of time to think about it if you need to. I'm just, I don't want to rush you because I know we had that amateur. We had that amateur stuff here. Everything's good. Hey, but now, that went on for a while. Carry on with it. Tell me about it.
The CrossFit Players. The CrossFit Players formed probably, and here again, I'm throwing out dates that I'm not sure about, but probably in the earlier mid '60s, I think that group formed, the little theater group. And the building where they performed is still over there on Arkansas Street, on the south end of Arkansas, right across. It's right next to where the CrossFit Housing Authority is. If anybody knows that, the building next to it was the little theater auditorium. Interesting side note, the auditorium for the little theater originally was the band room in what they called the old Green School, which stood where Hastings Elementary or Hastings Learning Center, I think they call it now, is up on Oak Street. That was one of the earlier schools in CrossFit. That's neither here nor there. It's just one of those little historical facts that I happen to know because I'm old and I remember stuff like that. But anyway, the little theater had this building, and they would put on usually about 3 plays a year, 3 plays a season, a musical and a couple of others. And I got involved. I want to say the first play I did there was I took on a part in the chorus of one of the musicals. I think it was The Unsinkable Molly Brown. And some people had told me, says, well, you need to get involved in this. It's a lot of fun, and I, back in the day, I could actually sing a little bit. I was in choir through all 6 years of high school. So, and between that and singing in church, I had some vocal music training. And so I got in the chorus and got bitten by the bug and started doing plays after that. And I would do 1 or 2 plays a year, and the ones that I wasn't in, I probably would work in the background because that was as much fun as anything, building the sets, helping to produce the plays. I eventually directed quite a few, and I would work in the lighting and sound booth quite a bit because that was kind of a natural extension, I guess, of what I was doing in my work life. I was a sound man, so I worked with that a lot and made a lot of friends and contacts. I also did some work with the Cotton Country Players in Bastrop. They have a wonderful theater there on the square in Bastrop. Beautiful. It's actually, it dates back to vaudeville days. If you get backstage and look up, you can still see the original proscenium around the front of the stage in the theater, which is just beautiful, a work of art in itself. So I did some work down there too, and did some plays with them, and even directed a few. And over the years, the interest, it seems, in the CrossFit Players here, like everything else, it kind of waned down, and it kind of reached a point to where we just couldn't pull the people together that we needed to put productions on. And so the whole thing kind of faded by the wayside for a couple of years. Then some people tried to bring it back, and they did a few plays, but I think they encountered the same problem. It's something that I would really like to see come back in the community because amateur theater is a lot of fun to do. And you discover that you people around you really can rise to the occasion of performance. I think you have to be a certain kind of person to want to get up there and perform in front of other people. You have to have a bit of, it's kind of like being in radio. You got to have an ego for one thing, and you have to pretty well have no shame because you're going to be doing stuff that most people would consider embarrassing. So you can't let that get to you. You can't be afraid to get up in front of people and make a fool of yourself. And there are some of us people in this world that we seem to thrive on that. And I think I'm one of them because I have spent much of my life making a fool of myself in front of other people. But hey, it's a living. That's all I can say.
Well, that is, and it's been a beautiful thing for most of the people around here. So how much more time do we have of you?
Brad, I talk for a living, so I can talk as long as you need me to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I want you to be able to, if we need to take a little break real quick, we can. But if we don't, we can just plow on. I mean, it's up to you. If we can pause for a moment or not, or we can roll on.
Well, I'm gonna get a drink of water here.
There's nothing wrong with that. I mean,
but otherwise, see, where else did you want to go here? It's just kind of different for me. I'll tell you right up front. I'm usually the one doing the interview, not the one getting interviewed as a general rule. So, so it's a little bit different for me to just sit here and answer questions. So
yeah.
Now, I probably go off on a tangent. I have a real bad habit of doing that sometimes.
That's exactly why I wanted to have you here. I don't, this is just me egging you on. I mean, this is just, because I have admiration for you. I've been watching you for a long time. I've been, like I said, I'm not quite as old as you. I'm probably 14, 15 years younger than you, but
yeah.
So I came up and you were kind of hitting your go with it, and I remember all those names you mentioned in local radio here. I mean, all of them, and those guys, But of course, people have gotten away from local radio. I wish they would go more back to local radio because, and like you said, though, you got me to thinking a little bit ago about all of the businesses that were here. I mean, because there are all these different niches that people were fulfilling. There was Otasco, and there was 12 different grocery stores, and had a Safeway, this and that, and Hana and everything. So all of that different, niche, shopping you could do, and
exactly,
there's very few of those things left here, man. It's like, but now everywhere is drying up. But now I'm gonna tell you, I have faith right now. If ever, with the leadership that I'm seeing. This is just my little humble opinion, but man, there's some people out there that's digging, and I'm gonna tell you, CrossFit is well positioned, and I want to invite people to come check us out. This is a beautiful place to live.
It really is, and I don't mean to interrupt, but I would have to agree with you about our local leadership. I mean, I work closely, being in radio and all. I've become good friends and work closely with Mayor Marshall. And she is a go-getter. And the CrossFit Economic Development Agency is hard at work trying to bring new business and industry in. They've done a lot for this community and are continuing to do a lot for it. We're building our school system back up and our education system. We've got that new high school finally, and that has made a really big difference having the new educational facility at our disposal and kind of consolidating everything together. So we're working there. That's coming back up. And we had so many local projects. The repaving that was Main Street, recently, and some of the side streets. I think they've got some side streets now that are going to be repaved in the near future. Yes, you are absolutely right. They're working on redoing the tennis courts. That's another big community project that's going on. The work to keep the swimming pool, get it reopened, and keep it operational. And I hate that a few years ago we lost our zoo. but I perfectly understand why. I was a member of the Friends of the Zoo and was on their board of directors some years ago, and worked extensively to try and keep that zoo going and to make improvements to it. But here again, that's something that it takes more money than ever before to operate and to meet federal standards that you have to meet in order to have a facility like that. So I'm perfectly understand that, you know, it just wasn't going to happen here anymore. But still, that's another nice piece of CrossFit history. I think all of us grew up going to that zoo, so yourself included, I'm sure, going over there to see the animals. That was just a wonderful thing. And I enjoyed, when I was a kid, I enjoyed taking my kids, there, so that's another thing that's gone by the wayside. But that all being said, we are moving up in this community, and we have a community to be proud of. It's a unique community. Whenever we had the major industry here, when Georgia Pacific was at its peak, and was really, really driving the driving economic force around here, they brought in people from all over the country. And so we had an unusual population here in CrossFit. This would have been especially during the 80s and 90s, I think. We had people from all over the country. So we had a lot of a very eclectic influence in this community. We weren't just your little old quiet southern town. CrossFit's never been that. It's always been a thriving community, and that had a lot of outside input into our culture around here. And that's one thing about CrossFit that I like. This has always been a cultured community. People here kind of set their standards maybe a little bit higher than some people do, and as a result, the community reflects that. And what we have, what we get, what we do, and what we have to offer reflects that too. And that has stayed with us, even though we maybe don't have that major industry, don't have that economic force anymore, don't have those people coming in from all over, but we do have people living here from all over the world, literally, much less all over the country. And so we still have that ability to pull in contributions from outside cultural influences, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And all of that is melding together in our community, and I think that's a good thing, and that's going to push us forward.
Well, I want you one thing you've been kind of driving home, I got some background noise, but I'm going to be very brief. You've mentioned sports. And that's huge with Ashley County. And I hear that we're doing the baseball field out there. And, of course, I've always been involved with baseball with my children and myself and my dad and everybody, all through the years. And CrossFit has really got really good sports teams here. Baseball has been going on. There's football. You mentioned tennis. Tell us about sports.
I spent a lot of years broadcasting CrossFit football. Now, I wasn't the play-by-play guy. I was always the color commentator. But that was fine with me, and because I just never quite got the knack for play-by-play. But I worked with Charlie Park, another name that comes up there. He was play-by-play for a long time. And he and I used to, go all over the place doing football games during football season. I worked with several other really good play-by-play announcers over the years too, that have come and gone here in our area at our station. So so I've seen. I can guarantee you, I saw more football games after I got out of school than when I was in school, because I was at every one then working, and So we have always had some great football teams, great programs. We've had some tremendous coaches come through here working with our school system, not just in football, but track, of course. The track and field team is still famous statewide from here in Crossett from over the years, and they still are a high performing team. All of our baseball programs are good, and here again, that's something else that we've covered extensively on the radio is the summer baseball programs, basketball as well, covering our local teams. So and we having the stations that we do now, we cover both Crossett and Hamburg, so we are just as fond and as much admiration for the Lions as we have the Eagles, because they've got a great sports program there, and that they're part of the Ashley County family as well. So we got that reputation for good sports around here, and we have had some tremendous teams in all various sports over the years. We've had and some that you don't hear a lot about. I mentioned Hamburg. They have and have had over the years a great archery team out of Hamburg. They've produced some great archery teams that go on to state and national competitions in high school archery, which doesn't get a whole lot of promotion. I mean, I don't even think their team doesn't get school funding. It's privately funded, but it is a school team nonetheless. Swim teams, there again, of course, we got Crest here in Crossett that does a wonderful job, and but sometimes I think they don't get the attention that they deserve, because they produce some fantastic swimmers and competitors in high school swim team competition. And not to mention simply offering the opportunity for kids to learn how to swim, which is arguably one of the most important things you'll learn to do in life. I say that because to this day, I'm not a good swimmer. I have never drowned, but I don't consider myself a swimmer. I wish I was a lot better. So you've got that, and tennis teams. Golf teams, they have golf teams, that really don't get the press and attention that probably they should, because we've had, there's all kinds of sports, and any kind of sport is important, I think. Soccer's up and coming too. So there's another one, we're starting to educate young kids with soccer as they come up. So that's going to be a big sport as well. And I think the fact that we're fortunate that we spent the money and built the sports complex, the Scott McCormick Sports Complex, which is just right around the corner from where our studios are here in Crossett, down Wellfield Road. That is a wonderful facility that it offers a chance for sports to be played, and also is a revenue maker, because they've got a facility there where they can host regional tournaments, and all these other sports teams will come in to play. And when those other teams come in to play, they bring parents and brothers and sisters with them to watch. And all those people have got to stay somewhere. So they eat in our restaurants, they stay in our motels, they shop in our stores, so it's a revenue builder for the community. Sports is can be a big money maker, not just for the school, but for the entire community. So I think we have a great sports reputation in this area, and I think we should do everything we can to maintain it.
There's something else that we have that's beautiful. We have some great sports teams. We have that new school that's the most absolutely beautiful thing you'll ever see. Hamburg has both of these teams. These towns have absolutely wonderful football fields. I mean, it's like the most beautiful thing you ever see. And not only that, I think some other things change them here in terms of small business. I was talking to a guy the other day. There's a catfish group around here that's out doing a catfish tournament, and it's building some momentum for Southeast Arkansas and beyond that. And there's a yoga group here, and I've not really got to check that out yet, but I probably need to. That's
me too. I'm laughing because I'm with you. Yeah, I need yoga in my life too, but I don't have it yet. So
we can keep searching. But now there's some new industry out here. I mean, you mentioned the baseball complex there. I mean, there's some guys right there behind you guys, behind your studio over there. There's some new businesses over there.
There's a whole little industrial park back there behind our studios. This is literally behind Walmart for the Super Center. Everybody knows where that is in the area. And back across the railroad tracks behind Walmart, there's a whole little industrial park building up down there around the city water tower. So and that's growing. We've got there's 2 plants down there, and I think that new trailer plant is also back down there. So and that's a wonderful little industry. We're lucky to have them. They are great industry, great employer, and great citizens in the community. They're so involved, and that's something that you have to have. And I've noticed that a lot of times, and this has happened here in Crossett, and I see it happening other places too, when some of the larger corporate people move in and take over smaller corporations, you lose that touch with the community. That they're not getting as involved in community affairs as a truly local corporation would be, and that's something that you need within a community like ours, especially. Involvement and support is so important because that's the way you build everything up and you keep things moving up. So it's good to see some of these smaller industries that are moving in, and they come in and they say, okay, we want to be involved. We want to support this and that because we're here to stay, and we want this place to grow. We want to grow with it. And that is such a wonderful attitude, a refreshing attitude to see, I think, in any kind of business or industry. And that's when you've got a really good business and community member there.
Hey, and you mentioned that. I'm gonna jump right into what we just got through finished going through here a few days ago in Ashley County, specifically in Crossett. That was that rodeo. I mean, that thing's been going on here for a long time, and I hear this year was pretty much a banner year in terms of specifically the last few years because of COVID and this, that, and the other. And it seems like people are wanting to get back out, and we've been seeing it. Of course, there's a lot of people that still can't because of from extraordinary circumstances. They may have some kind of a health issue or whatever else, but we've seen several things that Mayor Marshall and other people were doing around town with, like the New Year's Eve events and getting to see people. And there's the food truck thing again. That a group that I mentioned a little bit ago, the yoga group. I think it's Namaste or Name Ace. I can't.
Namaste. Namaste. Yeah, Namaste is the way it is. The rodeo was great. Yeah. It's 75th, the 75th rodeo. And that let me tie that into something that I've caught myself talking about a lot in the past few years, especially. We just had the 75th CrossFit Riding Club rodeo. Okay. Earlier this summer, the first weekend in May, we had the 52nd annual Armadillo Festival. This fall in October, we will have the Wiggins Festival, and I'd be lying if I could give you the number off the top of my head, but I think it's going to be the 40th something Wiggins Festival. And this is in a community, this community of CrossFit, which is, I don't know, I don't know to hear it then the exact, but we're a little over 100 years old. You know, I remember the centennial of CrossFit. It was not that long ago. So we're, 110, 100 and something years old here. And, but yet here we have these social events, rodeo, festivals, this thing, that thing. Here shortly, the CrossFit Chamber of Commerce is going to be doing their bass tournament, their annual bass tournament. And here again, it's in the 30s or 40s that they've been, doing this. These things have become institutions in our area. We are so very strong on tradition here. The people in CrossFit Hamburg, Ashley County, and I think it's kind of a southern thing in general, and it probably applies to other parts of the country too. I don't want to just put a claim on it, but people, grassroots people like us, we get caught up in tradition, and that is that's such an admirable thing because it keeps things going. To think that a community this size, because we're really, when you look at some other places, we're just a little bit more than a dot in the road, But a community this size could have consistently put on a rodeo of the caliber we do for 75 years, for 3/4 of a century. And you mentioned COVID. I tell you, in 2020, everything shut down. Nothing happened. People were isolated, locked away. Everything got canceled, got canned. But you know what? We had a rodeo in 2020. If you remember, the CrossFit Riding Club did everything they could to get special dispensation to put their rodeo on, and they did it, and it worked out fine. As far as I know, nobody got sick from going to the rodeo. Somebody may have, but I didn't hear about it. So, we had a rodeo the year of COVID, and that says something right there about how important that event is. And we've done it for 75 years. Hamburg has put on that Armadillo Festival for over half a century now, longer than.
Talk about that. That's an interesting festival. They have big names there playing music. I mean, that modern country music you was talking about. I like it too. I'm gonna throw that in real quick. But man, they've really, Hamburg has been shining a big light over there on themselves. Man, they're like trying to be, there for the younger people. They're trying to grow.
It really is. It really is. And this year the musical guests were the Marshall Tucker Band, which I know it's a big country rock, southern rock band from the 70s and 80s. So we had them here, last year. Before that, the previous year was Diamond Rio, another one of the big country bands, came through. So yeah, and I don't even know who they're thinking about for next year, but there'll be somebody, and they bring them in and get sponsors to bring them in. So it's a free show. You don't have to buy a ticket to see these people. You just have to show up and enjoy the show, and it's part of the festival.
Let me throw in one other name. That Lainey, she was just busting out of. We were her first show, and she's got real big now. Lainey, was it Wilson?
Lady Wilson, yeah, from down in Louisiana, yeah. That's right. I had forgotten, but we had her here, and now she's become a superstar, So she's just our latest talent, because we got her, we got Tim McGraw from not that far away here, from down around Rayville, is where he's from. Laney Wilson's from that same general area, really, there in Northeast Louisiana. And so, we've got our share of talent from around here. Some people may not. Trey Hawkins. Trey's a good friend of mine, and I've watched that band come up through their entire career, and yeah, fantastic guys, fantastic people, and fantastic musicians. Really know how to put on a show and how to entertain. Trey amazes me. I mean, you stick Trey on the stage with a guitar, and man, he'll just mesmerize you all by himself. Doesn't have to have the band, just him. He'll just mesmerize you there for an hour or more. So we're fortunate to have them. We've got a lot of talent around here, a lot of musical talent that's come out of our area and is continuing to come up. So, and that's something else that as local radio, we try our best to support these people to get, especially when they're starting out, to get that music out there and to help them make some contacts to spread their music out so that they can get other people playing their music, because you never know when you might be helping the next superstar along. And that would be cool.
We can't have this conversation without Chase Outlaw as well. I mean, talking about rodeo. I mean, he's in a movie now, as I understand it. Did you see that blurb the other day that he's going to be kind of like George Strait starring in a movie? Of course, he's not.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know much about it. And here again, Tate's. I mean, I'm sounding like an old timer that I am, because I remember Tate when he was a little kid. I knew his mama, and so I don't know a lot about this movie, but I think that, if I'm not mistaken, that's actually why he more or less missed the Crossroad Rodeo, because he was busy doing this movie thing. So we're just gonna I got to find out some more about that. But I do know, he's going to, and obviously it's a movie about rodeo and bull riding. So it'll be interesting to see that. But there again, he's going to be Tate's going to come out of Hamburg and made a name for himself, just like Scottie Pippen did, so with the NBA. So we've got our superstars around here, and it's kind of interesting for those of us who, what's the what's the old thing for the superstars? They talk about, whenever you come back home, you're still just who you were, you're nothing special. It's just because we all remember you before you were a star, But so it kind of grounds you, I think, to do that, to come back home, and that's a good thing too. You don't want to let that ego get out of hand.
Well, I had to move off and for a long time, and I moved back about 7 or 8 years ago. But man, I got back here and I had to get a 4-wheel drive because, there's rivers around here with some of the biggest rivers, fishing, hunting, we talked about all the sports and the theater and all the stuff we have going, industry and education. And really, we score pretty well with education. We could do better always, but it's always good to be moving, have goals moving forward. But, the fishing and hunting areas here, this is Felsenthal is huge, and let's move there. I want to pick your brain. I don't know what you know about down there, Russ, but I know there's a business down there, and I know there's a port, and I know there's all. I got too close to the mic. I know there's a port. I know there's a business down there collecting vines. I don't know if you know about that, but there's that port just moved through a great big some kind of a part for a mill up in like Southwest Arkansas. So there, we can't forget about that part of our culture down here. I mean, that's a big part of our economic activity. What do you know about the Felsenthal and all that port and all that stuff in there, Russ?
I don't know a whole lot about the port. I remember whenever they actually built the port and they set it up, and then over the years it's gotten some criticism because people were saying, well, it's just sitting there, it's not doing anything. Well, it does. It doesn't do a whole lot, but when it does something, it's big. It's like that piece that came through. That would not have been possible without the Crossett port. And so it's one of those things that just being there when it's needed is a big thing in itself. And I think here again the business will pick up. They're still working to utilize the Washita River for water transport. That is a work in progress. But they've got it to where it's navigable for much of its distance. They've got the lock and dam systems in there now to where ships can move up. I say ships, big boats anyway, can move up and down. Barges could move up and down. So I think this is here again. That's one of those good things that is still a work in progress, and we're going to see more from that in the future. We are so very lucky to have the Felsenthal National Wildlife Refuge like we do, located there in the Washita Basin. That is such a marvelous sportsman's paradise within itself. Here again, I think some people don't give South Arkansas the credit it needs for the sport fishing. You've got, of course, the Crossett Bass Tournament, but you've got other bass tournaments throughout the year that go on down there too, and fishing tournaments for both adults and young people. You got more in this area that up and down the river, there are other tournaments that go on too that utilize that. This area is some of the absolute best deer hunting in the Mid-South. People come from all over the country every fall to deer hunt here. Celebrities come here to deer hunt, and they keep a low profile, so you never know about it, but you ask an old deer hunter, they'll say, oh yeah, I remember when such and such came down, and we actually met them because they were here deer hunting, and so we have that attraction, and I think I am of the opinion anyway that we need to work to develop the tourism of this area a little bit more, because we already have a pretty good tourist industry going on, but I think more could be done to promote it and to take advantage of it as a revenue source, because we have the facilities for hunting and fishing and water sports year round. That's something that it's a natural part of this area. It was given to us by nature, so that if we can utilize it to the benefit of maintaining those areas and also improving the economy around here, I think we should do anything we can to forward that idea.
So let's just I want to just do a little bouncing around thing about the history of the area. I just want to just pick your brain on anything that you can talk about that you think that you've happened across recently that stands out about our part of the country here. I know that one of the things that always stood out for me was making charcoal, for barbecue type grills. Now, I didn't even know that until I read that book. What was it called? The Whisper, you remember that book, The Whispering Lady? It's the history of Crossett by Buckner.
Oh yeah, from Reverend Buckner's book. Yeah, Wilderness Lady. Wilderness Lady.
That's it.
Oh, you'll learn a lot reading that book. That's a wonderful book. J.W. Buckner was a walking encyclopedia when it came to the history of this area. Quite a man. Here again, I was fortunate enough to have met him and knew him. He was quite an individual, quite a character. But yeah, they in the early. This was like the early chemical plant. They made charcoal, and they also had a plant that made formaldehyde. This was the Crossett Company, and then later, of course, Georgia Pacific bought it out, and they continued these operations for some time. But my father was employed at the paper mill here. He worked in the power plant. He was a bark furnace fireman. He operated some of the furnaces where they burn bark to make steam to run the whole plant. So I kind of grew up knowing, I guess, about the operation. But I think everybody did, because most everyone's family had somebody who worked at the paper mill. We were, after all, a paper mill town, so that's what it was all about. But yeah, the charcoal plant, I know they made formaldehyde, and then later on they came into what's known as the chemical plant, which is still there now. It's under a different ownership and all. But then they built the chemical and started producing other things that were basically byproducts, I guess, of the paper industry that they could take advantage of. But yeah, I remember when I was a kid learning that they made charcoal, and I thought that was kind of cool, because I remember asking my dad, "Well, how do you make charcoal?" And he just kind of said, "You burn wood." Okay. Yeah. A little more to it than that, but that's basically what it is. You char wood and you get charcoal, so that's why they call it that.
Well, you got me thinking about history here. I wanted to throw this thing out there. It's like if you drive down the city of Crossett, if you're on the Martin Luther King Jr. Drive, or if you're on Main Street, you're going to find the most extraordinary city streets you'll ever find, probably in most cities anywhere. A little bit, specifically little small towns, and probably anywhere around the world. I mean, these streets are extraordinarily wide. In fact, the Wilderness Lady book, I think it lists how wide these streets are. They're like 80 feet wide or something like that.
Yeah.
And this is not new. This has been there for a long time. The city was designed around that. And now we have those. We walked up there the other day around the park, the boys and I, and we saw that Yale, those Yale buildings up there.
Yeah, the Yale camp buildings that they moved there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's I am glad they preserved those. When I was a much younger, I was a Boy Scout for a few years, and they, which is odd, because later on when my son was a scout, I ended up being a scout master for about 12 years too. But when I was a Boy Scout, we actually camped once out at Yale Camp. We didn't stay in the cabins. We had tents, of course. But that's probably whenever I found out that place was there. And then later on, I learned the history of it, and I thought, well, it's fascinating that Yale University, up in the Northeast, actually had a training facility in Crossett, Arkansas, because we had such a great forestry program, and that's where the name Yale came from. So yeah, I was really pleased that the move came, that I guess the city had acquired ownership of the cabins. I don't know, but then Weyerhaeuser Corporation was very instrumental in helping to get them moved to the city park and set up to where the city can use that now for special events. So yeah, that's awfully cool. You were talking about the street being wide. Do you know why Main Street is so darn wide?
Tell me.
Here again, this is probably something that's in J.W. Buckner's book. I don't know, but it's from way back. The street is so wide, they designed it to be wide enough that they could turn a horse-drawn wagon of logs around in the street. That, in other words, a wagon of logs pulled by horses could make a U-turn in the street, and they wanted the street wide enough to do that. That's the reason it is as wide as it is. It's basically, it's 4 lanes with parking, so it's basically a 6-lane street when you get right down to it. And that's because of the early sawmill, the early timber industry, where they could turn a wagon around, and the street stayed that wide to this very day.
Well, another thing that's very fascinating about CrossFit, and we've been teasing around the edge of it here with 2 conversations. One was the zoo that's now no longer there, the Yale houses being there, and me walking around a sidewalk to see those Yale houses. And that's that park. I mean, I can't tell you, ever since I've been a small child, ever since I can remember in the 70s, I have either walked around that park, I have rode bicycle while my dad ran, I have ran while my boys rode a bicycle, I have, with my boys, everything. We've spent a lot of Saturday mornings running around that park down there, and it's beautiful. I mean, right now, if you walk around it, it is one of the most beautiful places you ever see around Lucas Pond there. I mean, what do you know about the history of that? And right beside it, if you can remember, if not, we can come back to it if we think about it, was that little hotel I hear is being taken down over there. But that park is more interesting than anything to me. There's that long sidewalk walk around that thing, Russ. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I've got a lot of fond memories of the park too. I too remember, in my much younger and healthier days, I used to jog around that park, take the long sidewalk all the way around. So I'd probably have a heart failure now if I tried to, but yeah, that was a lot of fun. And, I know, Lucas, Pond, I'm not sure about the history of it. It wasn't a natural pond. They actually dug it. I'm not sure why it was dug at the time, but it was dug out though. So it's a man-made pond or lake, and, it's always been there. There's so many memories about Lucas, but because here again, it's a beautiful place, and I remember, going fishing in it with one of my best friends when I was much younger. We used to go over there and fish a lot. I remember one time, and here again, I don't know exactly what it was. It had to be in the mid 80s somewhere. One time in the winter, it got cold enough that it froze over. We had ice over most, if not all, of Lucas, because we had temperatures that dropped below freezing and stayed there for like a week or so, something like that. And I remember that because my second child, my second daughter, was just a toddler then, and we went over there to look at it, and I actually held her hand and let her walk along the edge, and she walked on the ice. She walked on the water, in the pond. I didn't step on it because I don't think it would have held me, but it held her just fine. And that had to be, I guess, in the mid 80s, one of the colder winters that we've had here in the Mid-South over the years. But that is an absolute beautiful pond to this day, and I think it's maintained better than ever. You do have sidewalks that go completely around it and through the levee across the middle of it that separates the upper and lower ponds. So, and then you have those 2 beautiful wharfs that the city built. The fishing wharfs that go out on the pond from the city park area. So that lets you enjoy it even more. But I would encourage anyone to take that walk around the pond. It's probably, I don't know, you can put in tell me what you think about it, but I'll bet you it's maybe all the way around might total what would you say, 1.5 miles maybe at the most, something like that.
Well, if you go the long way, it's about 2.35 miles.
Okay, so it's a little longer than I thought. So it's a little over 2 miles then. Okay. Come to think of it, I do remember they marked that on the sidewalks, didn't they? Because the school track runners used to use that. I remember that now. That it's like 2.35, I believe, is the correct figure for it. So it's a good little 2 mile walk, but it's easy, you know. I mean, it's all level. The sidewalks are in good shape. You're in shade for virtually all of it because you're walking through, you know, trees. So it's a wonderful walk to take, and some good. It's making me want to go over there and walk it now, but it's too hot today. I wouldn't try it.
No. Man, hey, those. You got to go early. But now I'm going to tell you another place, too, that we hadn't talked about yet, which is we talked about Lucas Pond. I call it a lake, too, because it's pretty big. It's not like a square pond down there. I mean, this thing is very naturally shaped. It's like a yin-yang type symbol or something. But anyway, so right west of us here, maybe a little bit west and a little bit north, is Lake Georgia Pacific. You know, we talked about Felsenthal, but Lake Georgia Pacific is I mean, that's a huge place, and there's all kinds of activities down there too. Specifically, or there used to be. I hadn't really kept up with what's going on because my children, we don't really go to that fishing thing. But real quick, you know, over the years, the companies and local companies, like you mentioned earlier, small businesses that could to get their name out there, they would contribute to getting fish to be dumped into the ponds and to the lakes and stuff there for special events and such. So it's been a cultural thing for us for a long time down there. People used to swim back there. We used to swim what we call stillion. I don't know, back in the 70s and early 80s. Of course, I think it got dangerous down there and, you know, not the best place to swim. But whenever I throw out the word Lake Georgia Pacific and, you know, the store and all that down there, what comes to your mind?
A couple of things. I can remember, I have vague memories of the creation of it. I was pretty small whenever here again, that's a man-made lake, you know. So the company created that to use as a water reservoir, basically. And I can remember them making Lake GP, everyone talking about Lake GP and everything. And Stillion, when I was in high school, Stillion was the party place. You know, that's where that's where everybody went to party on the weekends. So I was down there a few times. We won't go into that, but and then later on, like you said, it kind of changed a little bit. And now, if I'm not mistaken, I think they actually have it. It's closed off. I don't believe the public can go into that area anymore because it is too dangerous to swim in that region and everything. Much of the lake, I think, is several areas are closed off now. We used to go down to well, I don't know what they call it, the bubbly hole, for it's either the pump in or the pump out station. I think it's the pump in station. You know, we used to go down there and swim some too, and that's another area that's been kind of closed off. I do remember, here again, I mentioned a few minutes ago that I was a scoutmaster for quite a few years, and my son was in scouting, and I give kudos to him. My son is an Eagle Scout, so I'm very proud of that fact. He came all the way through scouting program and achieved his Eagle designation. But I used to take the scout troop down to Lake GP, there where the store is, the pavilion, the store and all, and you can kind of go out on that little peninsula next to the boat access and camp. And we used to go down there and like camp for the weekends and all, and the boys would fish, take their boats out and fish and things like that. So yeah, I had a lot of good times camping down there, and remember one particular weekend that it ended up storming and we all had to stay in our camps because we found out later it was like tornadoes all around the area. We didn't know it at the time, or we'd have packed up and came home. But as it is, we toughed it out, and sat through a very dark and stormy night, so to speak, in Canvas, Kent. But yeah, some good memories down there. That's GP's another great place and another great sportsman area, like you said, that for the fishing and also in that general area around there. Most of it's private land, but there are a lot of hunting leases around that area where people that have bought in on a hunting lease can go out there and enjoy some good hunting during the year as well.
Hey, me and you are old enough to have seen this, but now a lot of our audience, because the average age in the United States of America, I believe, is like 38. But you and I are old enough to see this specifically in Ashley County of driving down a road, probably a dirt road, and looking up and seeing a person sitting up in a fire tower. You ever seen that before?
Yeah. Those fire towers have pretty well been put out of business now, thanks to air surveillance and satellite surveillance and everything else. I mean, there's just so many ways to look for fire now. But those fire towers are always fascinated me as a kid. And of course, later on, I've gotten to go up in a few of them, and they're still neat places. And to anyone who ever actually, wants to see one, there's a great one at Crossroads on 133 north of Crossage, and that's actually been added to the list of historic sites. The National Registry of Historic Sites. That fire tower, the Crossroads Fire Tower, is on that list, so it'll be stay there and be preserved now for the sake of history, which I think is pretty cool, So we have several places on the historic sites in Ashley County. That's something we probably need to touch on, that there are quite a few historical areas. We have our own CrossFit Auditorium here on South Main that they've gotten a historical designation for. Which that's another project that the city is working to restore and preserve, and I think that's a wonderful thing because that's I've got a lot of memories in that auditorium, from my youth and my high school days, and so I'm glad to see it still there and still being utilized, still being used to this day. And I know Hamburg has, I think, at least two churches, the old Presbyterian Church where the Garden Club meets, and also the Methodist Church on South Main are both, I think, on the historic register too. So we have our share of history being preserved. That goes back to what I was talking about, tradition. We're really big on tradition. And there are some things that are gone that we all lament. The biggest one probably in CrossFit would be the Rose Inn. Those of us who remember it or may say, man, I wish we could have done something to save that place. I don't know what it would be good for today. It'd be a museum, I suppose, but it wouldn't, meet standards for anyone to actually stay in it if it was here. But still, that was such a big part of downtown CrossFit. We all hated to see it go.
Hey, I tell you something else. Let's we always think about Ashley County, and of course, with us being uplanders up here that live in the upper timberlands up here. But if you go just east of Hamburg over there, you'll have some of the best water you'll ever get. Plus, you'll go down what's called the Overflow Hill and into the Delta. And we got another whole Ashley County over there. There's a lot of farming goes on. I don't know if you've had much interaction with that, but that's probably a third of the county over there, just farmland, and you're talking about latest technology. It's going on over there for sure. It's kind of interesting you mentioned that because it's like another planet over there from here. You go through, if you're on Highway 82 traveling east, you go through Snyder, little community there. You go through Snyder and you do a little S curve through the trees and you go down this hill, and when you level out, it's like you're in the Delta.
I mean, it's like somebody drew a line there that says, okay, this is where the pine trees stop and the delta starts. And it's just, to me, it's always been so strange. It's such a major change in the terrain. And then from then on, you know, just about halfway across, if you keep driving, you'll go halfway across Mississippi before you start getting out of the delta, the flatland, so to speak. And that's what's always amazed me about the delta. It's so flat, and it's always windy.
Those guys, that's right. I want to talk about, because you made a big point there. What it is it's the floodplains of the Mississippi River at its peak, when it was big. That's a huge river. And you're right. Whenever I describe being in the Delta, and I had never really been there a whole lot until like 2016, and I started working with some rice mills over there. And then I started working with other types of grain mills over there and just seeing what they had going on. I mean, there's a lot of money in farming. You hear me? Pays a lot of taxes in Ashley County. It's a big part of who we are. You know, really. You know, no longer small farms, but those big farms are still impactful.
It is definitely. Agriculture is very big here. I mean, our whole economy is built on what? Agriculture and forestry. And forestry is kind of a form of agriculture, I guess, when you get right down to it, because you're growing stuff. But growing food and growing trees. Those are the two things that keep us going around here.
That's for sure. And of course, you know, there's towns over there that I don't want to forget. There's, you know, we're talking about, you know, towns in Ashley County, and I want to put this out for everybody. And it's kind of long and winding. And of course, I'm going to tell you right now, Russ Miller, I appreciate the time. We're going to be winding up here pretty soon. I know this is a huge thing, but this is I hope a lot of people are able to be talking about this. But there's Portland over there. I know there's Portland. What else is in Ashley County over there? Can you
Portland, Parkdale, Montrose, and Wilmot.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in that order, top to bottom.
That's right.
You know, Wilmot's at the bottom, I can tell you that. But the other three, I think Montrose is at top, and Parkdale and Portland are in between. They're on Highway 65. So, but I'm not sure which is farther north.
Let's talk about one more landmark there, and then we're going to fade off into this Saturday evening. And I appreciate your time more than you can ever imagine, and I hope you can post this on your channel as well. But right down the middle of that delta over there, you know, right before you get to the Mississippi River, which is one of the biggest rivers in the world, but before you ever get to there, running through the middle of Ashley County, right on the other side of the Overflow Hill is the Bayou Bartholomew. And I don't know if a lot of people. This thing is like one of the longest bayous or it is the longest bayou in the world, isn't it? Something like that.
I think you're right there. If I'm not mistaken, it is. And you know, there's you know, I used to say that, you know, I think Bayou Bartholomew probably, you know, used to be part of the Mississippi River, but I don't really think it was. But it is, Bayou Bartholomew is incredible in that it starts, somewhere up around Pine Bluff or north of Pine Bluff, and makes its way straight down, like you said, straight down the middle of the southeast Arkansas area, comes right down the middle of Ashley County, and goes way on down into Louisiana, and I guess eventually empties into the Ouachita. If I'm not sure. It.
Would hit that. Yes, and then
it runs into the Ouachita River, and of course the Ouachita flows on into the Mississippi. So technically, I guess it is part of the Mississippi system when you look at it that way. But PBS in Arkansas, AETN. Did a special on Bayou Bartholomew a few years ago. I'd say that's probably been about 10 years. And I was fortunate enough, I think, to secure a copy on DVD, although I'm not really sure where it is now, but I have it somewhere. But it was like an hour and a half special that they did on the bayou, its history, and just kind of a trip along it. And it was fascinating, you know, to learn what an important waterway this has been, not just in recent times, but the Native American settlers in this area, that was like a highway to them, you know, connecting hundreds of miles of this Mid-South area that they could go up and down and trade with each other and transport goods, food, and merchandise. So it has been utilized for probably thousands of years as a waterway. Yeah.
Think about Poverty Point, 3,500 years old plus, which is, have you ever been there?
Oh yes, I've been to Poverty Point, and it's so neat. I think everyone should go there because it's so neat to stand at Poverty Point, to stand in that it's almost it's a semicircle. It's a half moon of features, of archaeological features there, where this big trading center used to be for the Native Americans. But to stand in the middle of that thing, or to go up on top of that huge mound that they built there, and to think, you can almost feel the spirits of those who came before you, who actually built this place and utilized it. That's a fascinating thing to me, to stand there and think that, wow, you know, thousands and thousands of years ago, another person probably stood in this very spot I'm standing in, you know, just looking around, you know, and taking it all in. And now, here all this time later, I'm standing here and I've got a connection to that individual, because this place is still here. It's still preserved, and we're still learning about what it was in its heyday. So I love archaeology, and I've gone on several digs with the Arkansas Archaeological Society, and had a little bit of just basic training when it comes to how to do an archaeological dig and all. But that fascinates me. It's such a wonderful part of history to be able to look back and think about those who have come before us, how they lived, and how things that they did still affect us to this day, and how little people have changed in thousands and thousands of years. We know different stuff, but we're all basically still the same as we were back then. You know, not much has changed in that way.
Everybody's trying to stay cool in the summer and warm in the winter, aren't they?
That's right. You know, you love the people close to you. You love your children. You want the best. You want them to have a better life than you had. And that's the way mankind has felt for thousands and thousands of years. And I hope that's the way it always is.
Man, I tell you this, and Russ Miller, I'm going to tell you right now, I appreciate these hours with you. My God, this is like, you know, of course, in my mind, you were talking about, you know, all the history there. And, of course, my mind was thinking, yeah, you know, it's taken, I'm very philosophical right now, but it's like taking Earth, however long it's been here, to put us here in this conversation. And for me, I don't know about you, but it's been great. I appreciate your time more than you can ever imagine. And I'm going to let you just say goodbye for us. And when you're done, just hang up, okay?
Okay, Brad, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I have really enjoyed this. I think I mentioned earlier, you know, I talk for a living. They actually pay me to talk. So it's something I like to do, but I think this has been a nice trip backwards, looking back on our community and on what's going on around here. So So yeah, I have enjoyed it too. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. Maybe we can do this again in the future and kind of pick up where we left off. So we'll wait until that day. Maybe it won't take us 50 years like it has so far.
Be blessed, Russ Miller. Be blessed.
You too. Take care, my man. Pleasure talking with you. Bye-bye.